Hi guys, welcome back. This is episode number 102 of Mad Chat, featuring the first part of my interview with Mr. Jeff Williams, the creative mind behind the new game Darkstar, the interactive movie. Now this is a really ambitious adventure game, just as ambitious as Riven and Myst were back in the day. If you have been yearning for a return to old school adventure game goodness, you can really do a lot worse than Darkstar. Now I got to talk to Jeff about a wide variety of topics. His background is actually in film and video, so it was interesting to get his take on all of the, shall we say, crap going on in the games industry today. He's got some really interesting opinions on it all. And he's also familiar with the crew and cast and crew of Mystery Science Theater 3000. One of my favorite shows, and my guess is you probably like that too. So I'll get a lot of behind the scenes information on those guys as well. A lot of stuff to cover here, so without further ado, here is Mr. Jeff Williams. All right, folks, I am here with Jeff Allen Williams, the producer, writer, director, and animator of Darkstar, the interactive movie. In my opinion, probably one of the biggest and baddest adventure games to come out since... I was trying to think of a game, the last game on this scale in the genre. The only thing I can really think of is Riven. It's really on that scale. Thanks for being here, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thanks for the crazy nice comment you just made.
Well, tell me about how this project came about. You funded the whole thing yourself. You don't really have a gaming background. How did Darkstar come about?
Well, you know, it just started as a storyline, and I'd always intended to do a short film or a movie or something of that nature, and was actually kind of putting together the story and some of the pre-production when a friend of mine, I'm not a gamer, as you know, came to me with a game that he would play on his laptop while he's on airplanes, and it was, like you mentioned before, Riven. Strangely enough, you had mentioned that one. And he said, you just got to see this. And not being a gamer, I just went to Barnes & Noble and picked up the strategy guide. And I in one sitting, went through the whole thing. And was really inspired with the mood and the way they were able to make an environment that you felt like you were interacting in. And over the next weeks, I kind of started thinking about making my project an interactive project like that. But something a little beyond, a lot more movie footage, a lot more storytelling, less gaming, less puzzles, not nearly as hard to play, but just as long to play, even because it wasn't as hard, just a lot more content. That's how I got started.
Why do you call it an interactive movie?
I thought I invented that term, because I was trying to come up with a way to describe what this was, because I was having a lot of trouble doing that without actually sitting somebody down and showing them. And I came up with that term, but that's a term that's been used before, I found out. But I think that's the best way to describe it, because if I call it a game, gamers are going to be disappointed. And if I call it a movie, lazy movie watchers are going to be like, oh, I got to work. So it's my best attempt at trying to describe what it is. But it is very difficult to really... There's always an aha moment when somebody sits down and actually sees it and go, oh, okay, I get it now. And that was the attempt to do that, but I don't think it works.
Well, if your background is not in gaming, what is your background?
Music video production. I'm a director. More entertainment. A lot of advertising projects. I've done work for Universal at the Titanic Museum. I designed a lot of interactive kiosks and projects for them, and it's something that I do. And this thing here was something for me to break out of the stuff that I was being told to do and do something that was my own and produce something that was fun for me, and that I could involve all my friends that are musicians and actors and meet some new friends that are actors and producers, and it worked. That's what I did.
What was it about Riven that fired your imagination so much?
It was the first time that I'd ever seen anything like that. When some of the movies came out that had a lot of that just kind of pulled you into them, like Star Wars and Raiders, and had their own world, and those were amazing to me. But to see something like that had music and mood, and you were like there, it really felt like you were there, even though it was very primitive. Riven was basically a slideshow with a few movies sprinkled in. Very well done, I must say. Cyan and the Millers did a great job putting that together. But that's what it was, and I thought, gosh, I could take that a little further with a lot more footage and stuff. And, so that's what it was. The combination of the music, the visuals, and the ability to move around and open things and look at them.
Well, Darkstar was supposed to be a 3-year project, if I read that correctly, and it's ended up taking something more like 11 years, right? Or 10 years.
Well, if I condensed it all down, taking out all of the some of the Hollywood politics and some of the crap that I went through, failed softwares and things like that, it would probably get up closer to 6 years production. It was pretty content complete toward the end of 2008. And then, a sprinkling of things in 2009 and 10 while we were doing the marketing and stuff. I was still tweaking things, and we were, of course, testing and all that, getting it ready for the replicators. But yeah, it took about 3 times longer than I ever dreamed it would.
I was wondering about a comment you had made yesterday about how everything nowadays, with not just the games industry, but the film industry as well, is run basically controlled by accountants. Bean counters calling the shots. And that really scares me, because it seems like accountants are some of the least creative and artistic people out there. So you elaborate on this thought a little bit?
Sure. It kind of explains why a lot of the quality of our television, movies, games have kind of skewed into a weird place. I mean, I wouldn't say the bean counters control it, but boy, they go to them first, and they actually put together formulas to figure out if something's going to be viable, if it's going to be a moneymaker. Has it got a name actor in it? Is it this? Is it that? Is it an IP that people will recognize? Has it got things that we can count on that'll make money? And they're not really looking as much for creativity, unique creativity like they used to. Like they were really, it's got to be different, and not anymore. It doesn't have to be different anymore. It needs to be something that people can relate to and that they can count on, that their accountant is going to come back and say, this will make probably X amount of dollars. And then they'll say, okay, we'll make it or we won't. And the accountants, if they see something that doesn't have a name actor, it's got all new people, an unproven director, whether it's a game or a movie or whatever, they'll say, don't do this. And they won't take a chance. It's getting worse and worse. And television's the same way.
I was kind of wondering what you think. A young George Lucas with Star Wars, if he was out today trying to sell that, do you think he'd have any luck?
It'd never happen. And
Really?
He'd tell you that too. It would never have happened. Some of this stuff was actually starting to happen even back then. It was, the seeds were planted there. And, Lucas, Spielberg too, during the making of Jaws, the studios were trying to pull their plug before they were done. I mean, Lucas was in London filming the last sequences, and he was told to stop. He was told to shut down, don't put any more money in this. And somebody got fired at 20th Century Fox for letting him finish a weekend. Got fired. And they were about 3/4 of the way through Star Wars. They said, what is this again? What is this space movie again? Are you kidding me? How much we got in it so far? Let's cut our losses. And they were visiting the set every day at Jaws. And in the studio's defense, Spielberg was going way over budget, and he made the decision, and he says he'd never do it again, to actually film on the ocean. Don't do that. But they were sending guys to pull the plug on him every day, and both of them were huge blockbusters. And a lot of those movies coming around that time, it was the same kind of thing. The studio would start getting sour on it when it was taking too long to get done, or if it ever went over budget. And these kind of movies almost always did while they were making them. They were going over budget, and boy, they freaked out. And they're even worse now. But to your question, no, I don't think Close Encounters would have got made. And a lot of the movies that got made by those guys afterward were only because they were proven. And then they say, okay, well, we know because he was successful with this that, we'll take a chance.
So I guess we'd be watching Gone with the Wind 4 or something like that now.
It still could happen, buddy.
Casablanca 2.
It still could happen. They're getting ready to remake The Big Chill. They just remade Arthur. I mean...
I think I heard somebody was joking around about a Weekend at Bernie's remake in 3D. I thought that That doesn't actually sound that that implausible.
always wanted that. They read my mind. That's a great idea.
Well, I tend to think that maybe an outsider's perspective, is what allowed you to make Darkstar. It seems like people that are immersed in the industry probably don't realize to what extent all these expectations guide what they do.
Yeah, my friend Mark Walters, who spent a lot of time at Activision, kind of said that to me, which I wouldn't have known that if I had not heard it from somebody like you or somebody like him, because I just approached it the way I approach anything I do. But they don't do that. I mean, first they run through that gamut of what we talked about. Is this going to make money? And then they figure out how to do it. And also when they do a game, like Mark told me, they usually have a game mechanic first, and then they wrap their story and their execution around that game mechanic. I started with a story and characters and that kind of thing, like you would a movie. So I approached it in a totally different way. And I did purposely try not to even see. I'd avert my eyes when my children would play their video games because I didn't want to be influenced. I was scared to death people would say, oh, yeah, you're ripping off this. And, oh, yeah, you're ripping off that. No, you're rebooting that. I didn't want to do that. And so I still get that. Oh, you ripped off this. It's like, I've never seen it. I don't know. How did I do that? But that was...
How did you write this story?
Well, first, I kind of formulated the plot in my head, and I'm not going to give any spoilers, but all the little twists and turns in the plot that happened, and then I sat down and wrote a screenplay, and Trace from Mystery Science actually was going to originally write the screenplay, but he got busy with the season of he was working at America's Funniest Home Videos at the time. They just started their season, so he got a little bit busy. So I just said, I'll just do it, and he just said, yeah, you just do it. So we wrote a screenplay, and then we actually halfway through production expanded it quite a bit to enlarge some characters. Like Simon and Captain O'Neill's character got expanded quite a bit too. Because initially I was thinking it would be a lot more first person. You wouldn't really see the character very much. Originally, Brad Pitt's brother, Doug, who lives here where I live. Not in my house, but at the same time.
Which is Missouri.
Yeah, Nick, he lives in Springfield, and he was going to be the guy, but he really wasn't going to have hardly any lines. You'd see him in the mirror. I'd show a few scenes of him walking around, but I didn't want him to color the character's thoughts and actions too much. Matter of fact, I even tried to figure out a way, well, what if a girl's playing? Does she want to be Captain John O'Neill, And I even tried to think about that, and then I moved further away from that. Just, no, it needs to be my story. Girls will be fine. And they were fine with it.
I know the casting must have been one of the most important decisions that you made about the game. Probably one of the most fun processes too.
It was.
How did Clive Robertson end up as captain?
Clive, I found him through his agent, and his agent actually presented a lot of other people before him. In their very early Lazy days, the first person they suggested was Chuck Berry, the, I think, 78-year-old guitar player. And I said, well, why do you think he would be good for a starship captain? They said, well, he lives in Missouri. And so I said, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And then they came up with some other names that I did talk to, Emilio Estevez, which I was just thinking with all this Charlie Sheen going on right now, boy, it would have been kind of cool if we had him right at the moment. Wonder how that would be working for us. I think really good. And then they had some other weird ones like Eric Estrada. They suggested him, and he's fine, but not what I wanted. And then they suggested Christopher Lambert from The Highlander, and he was a possibility for a bit, but he was going to go off, and he was going to be gone for 9 months, and I didn't want to wait. And then Clive came along, and I hadn't heard of Clive, and I didn't know about Sunset Beach, and I didn't know about Star Hunter. Star Hunter was only in Canada, so I'd never seen it. So I just did some research and looked at what he did, and just immediately he hit me immediately. He had the look I wanted, and at the time he was up for James Bond. He made it to within 6 guys. I mean, they had hundreds of people they considered, made it down to 6 before they pick the guy they got now, So I thought, wow, it'd be great if he got the James Bond gig, and he was great. He was perfect. And then the Mystery Science Theater guys kind of came out from me. I knew Trace, and then Trace just started bringing him in one by one until he got everybody in the Cinematic Titanic group, because they were kind of still communicating a lot. So he brought them in one by one, and that was kind of cool. And Peter Graves, it was between Shatner and Graves, and I wanted Graves because he kind of had a little bit of a tie into the Mystery Science Theater thing, because he'd had so many movies riffed by them. And I found out later, we did our parts, that he thought they were a bunch of idiots. I didn't know that. He didn't like what they did to him on the show, but he didn't tell me that, and he still did the job. He was a total pro. He thought they were idiots, but hey, I'll do this. It's cool.
I think he's got just the right voice too to do those.
His
lines. Just this. You just, everything stops and you have to listen to him, right?
Oh, you can't not. And his narration was a character. He just nailed it. The only direction I gave him was, I was picturing, I'd written it kind of like as if Rod Serling were saying these things out of Twilight Zone or Night Gallery, because he had such a rich delivery, and that's the only direction I gave him, and he locked in immediately. I think he probably would have still done it the way he did it, because he just brought a real emotion and wry wit to the material, and he really liked the material too. He read through it, and he got it immediately, that it was kind of sarcastic and a little bit condescending and pontificating, and he had a lot of fun with it.
It's a dead end that comes unexpectedly to one, yet part of another's divine plan. Food for thought in a desolate landscape called space, where hunger is born of amnesia and starvation the result of blind faith in others.
I think he almost seemed to relish those deaths, all the death scenes that he did.
Well, that's because I did. Those are my favorite parts, and I really encourage people to be sure to save and then get killed, because those are some of the coolest and most fun sequences, and some of them are really quite funny in a very dark way.
That's an interesting feature of the game, because most modern games there's no way to really die, at least in adventure games. So what motivated that decision?
Well, once again, it wasn't because of gaming. I wanted there to be interactive forks in the plot, and that was just, it was that, and I figured that'd be, it's almost like Chutes and Ladders, playing a game like that where you go down, oh my God, and that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted you to have these dead ends. And one thing I do regret from a technical standpoint, and I may fix this in the future, but I almost wish I'd done an autosave, because there are some times where you're really jacked, and an autosave so you have all these multiple versions, because you can, as you know, get down to the planet, and if you hadn't picked something up, you're kind of screwed. And if you haven't saved as a few times back up on the ship so you can go get this thing, you're starting over, and that pisses some people off.
It pisses some people off, but I've talked to plenty of adventure game fans that actually they're more pissed off by the modern conventions. They like the difficulty level.
Yeah, well, I have learned that there are no gamers alike. Some are pissed off by that, some are pissed off at me, some are pissed off at themselves. I'd rather them be pissed off at themselves. That was my idea. I thought I was making it too easy. I really did. And some people do say that. They say I made it too easy, that it should be harder. I've had some people say they can't get out of the first room. And I'm like, really? My cat can do that.
Well, tell me about the Mystery Science Theater guys. You said I guess you were friends with Trace before you started the game?
Yeah, I met Trace just right before I started the game, and he's the one I've had the most interaction with and know the best, yeah. And then he brought everybody in one at a time. The first person he brought in is Bees McKeever, she was on screen as well, but she was mostly behind the scenes at Mystery Science, doing a lot of the props and wardrobe. And that was her first job on Darkstar, was to do those kind of things for me. I didn't have a female lead for her because I'd already cast her part with somebody else. The person that ends up playing her character's sister, which that part didn't exist. So Bees asked, well, boy, I really like that idea, that character maybe playing that, would you consider it? And she cheated by sending me pictures of herself, how she envisioned it. and they were cool pictures. She dressed herself up kind of in Barbarella style, and it was totally not what I was seeing. She's the one who took this to the campy side. She did that. That was not an idea of mine. I was going to take it real seriously, at least as seriously as Star Wars does. You know what I mean? It still has a little bit of just a touch of campiness to it, but not much. But she's the one who took it to where I was going to actually make it a little more tongue-in-cheek because of her execution. So she became a character. And then the others came in one at a time after that. And I've been real close with Bees. Bees and I are really good friends. And last time I saw her was we went to Dragon Con together. I brought her there. And she appeared on her panel with Trace and I. And Clive was there too. And so I keep tabs with them, and they keep tabs on me.
What are these folks like behind the scenes?
They're collectively the funniest people I've ever known. I mean, talking about the Mystery Science Theater group, Trace is just a very intelligent, very funny, very creative guy. He's really you don't see all the things that he's capable of on Mystery Science Theater. I mean, he's just a very creative, thoughtful guy. He's got a lot of great ideas for some projects that I hope he gets to do. Bees is she's almost exactly as she seems, very sweet, very bubbly, really intense, very intelligent. She's very talented too. She works on a lot of projects in the Minneapolis area, regional kind of projects, commercials. Frank is, he's just the driest guy I've ever met, real dry. I remember asking him one time, and he and I were at Cheers at the airport in St. Louis, waiting for his plane or something, and the Beverly Hillbillies was on the new version, newer version was on the TV, and they had actually been sent the script by the studio, the Mystery Science Theater guys. A lot of movie guys did that to see if they would punch it up, make it funnier, and they decided they didn't want to mess with it. But I asked Frank, I said, do you remember what Jimmy Barney died of? And he goes, embarrassment.
Poor old Jim Varney.
Yeah, I loved him.
Yeah, me too. One of my favorites.
But there are a whole bunch of people. Josh is a really funny, talented guy. I mean, he's been one of the more successful of the group outside of the Mystery Science Theater genre with, Freaks and Geeks. He's a producer, director, writer. He stayed really busy in Hollywood. He's a very underrated musician. He's a really good musician. Mary Jo's a real nice lady. And just recently I've got to know her husband, Ron DeGroot. He goes to a lot of the Cinematic Titanic shows, and he's a really cool guy. And I hate it that and Joel, I really don't know Joel very well. I've only talked to him 4 or 5 times. They're all really nice people. Hope I didn't leave anybody out.
It'd be interesting if they gave a Darkstar the same MST3000 treatment, some type of commentary disc. That'd be pretty interesting.
Behind the scenes, they do. I'm sure. I'm sure.
And that's all for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I should be back next week with the second part of my second and final part of this interview with Mr. Jeff Williams. A lot of great questions and topics coming up, so stay tuned for that. Probably follow that with another retrospective, and then we'll hear from John Hare, who's really big with the Amiga fans, so a lot of great stuff coming up on Matt Chat. Now, you may have been wondering, Matt, where'd you get that awesome t-shirt? Now, the old Matt Chat t-shirt didn't really seem to impress too many people, so I called in the professional, aka my lovely wife, Elizabeth, and she designed this masterpiece of retro gaming attire. Now, I think you'll agree it's really a fun design, it's a fun t-shirt, and it's incredibly dorky, and I'm sure when you wear this you'll attract all kinds of attention and people will ask you about it. You can tell them all about your favorite classic games and of course Matt Chat. So get your shirt today. I'll post a link to it. You can purchase it through Zazzle, and I think it turned out really well. I'm really proud of it, and I'm sure you'll like yours too, so get one today. Now, I don't have any toast this week, but I did take the liberty of selecting another ale for myself. By the way, you guys need to step up to the plate, or I swear to God, there's going to be a Budweiser up here. Oh my God. But for this week, I've got a Paulaner Hefeweizen. That's one of my old favorites. It's brewed in Munich, Germany. I really like the Paulaner ales, but if you've got an ale, microbrew, whatever that you want me to try, all you got to do is set up a toast for me, and I'll be happy to do that on the next show, and the Drinking Horn and I will be very happy. I got a quotation this week from James Cameron, the movie director, and it goes something like this. And I think, by the way, this applies equally well to games as movies, but here's the quote. The film industry is about saying no to people. Inherently, you can't take no for an answer.
Well, this is kind of an ambiguous ending. Is this film horrible, or did it merely suck?
Yeah, now that I've seen it, should I kick a dog or a cat?
Do I want the director just killed, or should he be tortured first?
Oh, Crow.